Good evening, everyone. I would call to order the special city council meeting of November 28, 2018. This, let me see, doesn't announce what it is, but this is the Truth in Taxation public hearing. City Manager, do you have anything to offer as an introduction, or?
Yes, thank you, Mary Elliott, members of the City Council. Tonight is our required, state required, and annual Truth in Taxation public hearing. This is a public hearing where the public can comment on the tax rate that we're proposing. It is not a venue where we would talk about property values. And if folks are concerned about what their market value is or their tax value of their property, if there was a big change from year to year, that's something that's done in the spring directly with the county assessor's office and is not handled at the meeting tonight. So tonight, again, we're talking about the proposed tax levy for 2019. We would generally do this by having our finance director do a presentation to the city council and to the public on the basics of what we are doing with the 2019 tax levy. And incidentally, this is also being televised and recorded, so folks can watch it at home or watch it later on. And so if it's the council's pleasure to go ahead with that presentation, you can ask Mr. Regis to go ahead.
Mr. Regis, would you please give us your analysis?
Sure thing. We're looking right here is our timetable. We're on the third bullet point, which is our truth and taxation hearing, and then the fourth bullet point will be next December 11th when we bring the final budget and tax for the council for their approval. Some of the key issues for 2019, property taxes still remain our primary funding source of the general fund budget. Within the general fund, we have $1.2 million of LGA budgeted. That's a $50,000 increase over last year. We still have health insurance increases, which are affecting the general fund expenditures. Public safety dispatch public safety dispatch costs have increased up to $290,000. Included in the levy is a debt service levy for the 2018 A bonds of $375,000. Police and fire personnel cost increases, a $15,000 increase in our rolling stock equipment levy, and then we transitioned the homestead process from the city to the county in 2018. Just a slide here of history of our state aid. You can look down at the bottom there. We're going to realize about a $6,300 increase in LGA from 2018 to 2019. We look at a revenue comparison. Back in 2001, taxes and intergovernmental revenue were essentially equal. We look at 2019, taxes now comprise 68% of our general fund budget, while intergovernmental revenues only comprise 10%. Looking at strictly local government aid, which is included in intergovernmental revenue, for both 2018 and 2019, it's 4.95% of general fund revenue. Going back to that base year of 2001, LGA accounted for 24% of general fund revenue. Our 2019 gross levy is $21.6 million. That is a 4.87% increase over the 2018 levy. The components of that levy are the general fund levy at $16.7 million, the equipment levy of $800,000, the EDA levy of $567,000. And the debt service levy of $3.1 million and the tax abatement levy of $372,000. That gives us our $21.6 million. Just a look at our gross tax levy history. You can see 4.87 there at the top. That's for 2019, 6.11 last year, 3.26, and so on. Pretty wide variety of different levies in there. Our 2019 general fund budget is at $24,230,620. This is a 3.77% increase from the 2018 adopted budget. Looking at our revenues from 2019 to 2018, you can see a small decrease in taxes and then a corresponding increase in intergovernmental revenue, and that's the change in LGA. Everything else is the same. Nothing really changes. We go back 10 years to 2009, you can see in the increase there in taxes, a decrease in intergovernmental revenue, and a slight increase in charges for services. Looking at expenditures from 2018 to 2019, from year to year, everything is basically the same. We look at our three largest departments, public safety, public works, and fire. Those equate to 75% of our general fund expenditure. Those three departments, the total cost of those exceed the total general fund levy of $16.5 million. We would go back 10 years and look at our 2009 expenditures, compare those to 2019, you can see there's really not a lot of change, 58%, 57% for public safety and fire. Public works has decreased slightly, so they're really very comparable over a 10-year period, not a lot of change. We look at our levy impact on properties in the city. If we look at a $225,000 property, we're estimating, based on the information the county has provided us, a $16 increase in 2019 over the 2018 tax. We bump that up to $250,000 property, we're looking at an $18.22 increase from 2018 to 2019. And this is all based on a 10.6% estimated market value increase on the property.
And Chris, again, when you're speaking about like coming up on the property, you're looking at $275,000 property, and that is assuming it would have had a 10.6% or so increase in value, and the tax increase for 2009. You're giving the yearly figure, right?
Yes, I'm strictly looking at going from 2018 to 2019. It's about a $20 increase
For the year?
for the year. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Oops, wrong way. If we look at our capital improvement budget, moving on to that, it's at the 2019 budget is $31,075,000. Some of the major projects in that, continuation of 66th Street, the 77th Street underpass, mill and overlay project, utility projects, and various recreation projects are all included there. Our rolling stock equipment purchases for 2019, they exceed $1 million. Our general tax levy is only $800,000, so we've got a little gap there. And we've got some operating transfers into the central garage and IT funds to help fill that gap. Some of the major purchases are a fire pumper body, ice resurfacer, 4 interceptor squads, and computer network infrastructure. Moving on to the utility funds and the rates, we're looking at the water rates are expected to go up about 35 cents per 1,000 gallons in the tier 1. It's 42 cents per 1,000 gallons in tier 2, and I think, do my quick addition, I think 51 cents in tier 3, and 60% of our accounts are all in tier 1. And the rates are going up there. And then utility fund, wastewater, 51 cents per 1,000 gallons, equates to about $3.83 per quarter. MCS charges, which is the largest expense in this fund, are at almost $2.7 million.
Chris, I mean, to explain that, can we go back a slide on the,
Sure.
When you're looking at the utility fund, the wastewater or our sewer charges, MCES charges, that's what the city has to pay to Met Council to process our waste.
Yeah.
And obviously that is a huge part of what we have to charge for. It's, what is it, about 70-some% or something like that of our total?
I would say close
Somewhere
to
in there.
70%, yeah.
Yeah.
Stormwater fund is, we're proposing a $1.24 increase per quarter for 2019. Some of the rationale for the rate increases, there's outstanding debt within the utility funds, both water and stormwater, capital infrastructure needs and requirements, level of needed working capital, annual operating expenses, and then the aforementioned MCS sewer charges. So where are we going? Well, we've got significant right-of-way projects. Glendale Avenue, 65th Street are projects that are on the horizon, and they'll be funded by issuance of debt service. That debt service or debt issuance will put pressure on our tax levy, and so those are some issues that we are dealing with. Richfield must continue a long-term strategy for economic independence. We're still trying to do the LGA independence, wean ourselves of that. However, there is pressure to maintain that. The last 2 years have been hard. Long-term financial planning, we need to continue that to see where we're going. We need to maintain our current level of quality services. And then finally, we need to contain our operating costs as best we can. And I think we've kind of done that in the general fund if you look at the comparisons between year to year, but we still need to continue to do that. I think that is everything I have.
just one thing I would add also, though we had a 4.87% increase in the tax levy, if you factor out how much of that would be for our debt service, which was an increase of something like $375,000, that would have brought the tax levy increase, below 3%, probably, or right around?
Right around 3%.
Yeah, right. So I guess, so the message in that is that what we're doing is we're operating basically within what you would basically see as the cost of inflation that we have for materials. We have large increases typically for our insurance costs. And even when you factor that in, because we're not adding positions, you're looking at roughly a 3% increase. But when you have to factor in the idea that we're selling $10 million worth of bonds for all the street work and everything that we have to get done, that's what pushes it up that extra to get it up to about 4.87 or so. And it's just a way of doing business. In some other some other cities, rather than putting that in and rolling it into the tax levy, they might use that as a special assessment as it passes your home, and you might end up with a $12,000 or a $15,000 or even more charge to pay for your portion of a street. We don't think that that's the best way to do it, but rather to put it into the overall tax levy so that it's shared and it's not so onerous on any individual in any given year. But again, this budget is it's pretty much a status quo of what we've been doing in the past in terms of the number of people we have and the kind of equipment and supplies that we're using. It still is sufficient to take care of the goals I believe the City Council has set for 2019. But it doesn't give you a lot of room to do anything much more.
I have a couple questions. In terms of borrowing the $10 million limit, I know we've done that a couple years in a row now. Can you just talk about the history of that in the past? And then I know 2019 is already spoken for, but starting in 2020, is there a possibility of reducing that maybe to 8 or 9 and just get a sense for that?
Sure. Well, what we are facing is the same thing that first-ring suburbs across the United States is facing, and that is that the infrastructure that was put in the 60s and the 70s generally is wearing out and has got to be replaced. For the longest time, the city of Richfield, after it did its streets and finished up in the probably early 1980s at the latest, but we didn't have a lot of debt because we weren't doing a lot of wholesale redo of our public infrastructure. With redoing all of Portland Avenue, 66th Street, and our streets in town, and when you redo a street, you of course have to redo the sewers underneath it. It would be foolish to do that without doing your sewer infrastructure at the same time. That gets to be costly. For 2019, we're facing Lyndale Avenue, and Lyndale Avenue is unfortunately, it is literally falling apart. And if we don't address it now, in a couple years, if you started letting the base deteriorate, it would be way more expensive than what it's going to cost to do Lyndale Avenue now. So again, 2019, pretty much you're looking at, you have to do that. For 2020, I know that we have 65th Street, and that's got to get redone. 65th Street is integral to being able to do redevelopment at the hub, and I think that redevelopment at the hub is something that's going to be happening in the very near future. And because there's a sewer line that doesn't run underneath, when they changed the street configuration many years ago with 65th Street, rather than running the sewer under the street, they left the sewer where it was and moved the street. And that works fine, and it worked fine at the time. But if you're going to be able to utilize all of that area that is kind of the north parking lot of the hub, you got to get that sewer out of there and put it back under the street again. And that's a project that I know that we need to address in 2020. So I think you have a lot of your street kind of things done by about 2020. I'm not sure what other infrastructure will come up to be addressed. There's other buildings we have that need to be addressed. I don't think it would be along the lines of the $10 million like we've been doing in the past. The good news is that at the same time that we're incurring this debt, and the reason that the folks in our community have not seen, huge tax increases because of it is because of the redevelopment that we're doing at the same time. And we're adding and spreading that along a bigger tax base. And some of the things that were done back in the 70s and 80s, and even now in the 90s, putting together tax increment districts, those are going to be coming off of tax increment and coming onto the tax base. So that's going to jump in and help us as we go along. Even though doing, and $10 million is kind of the maximum. It's the maximum bank qualified bank loans that are bonded indebtedness that a city can do in a year without facing really high costs going over it. And even though we've done that for about 4 years, and it'll probably be 2019, I think would be the 5th year, Chris, maybe, or is it I think it might,
Fifth,
4th
yeah.
or 5th, one of the two. I still think we're going to be okay. After 2020, I think that's when the council is going to really have to take a hard look at how much more it can take a look at doing. But you'll also be in a better position to see how much the added tax base that you put it. A lot of that will be coming online, so that'll help. And I feel pretty confident about that.
Thank you. I have one more question. I know that our ice arena and the sheets of ice are going to need some repair too. I think there was another community, I think it was Plymouth, that went to the state legislature and asked for funds, and they did get that covered through the state. I don't know if that's something that we would consider.
We're always looking for funds to help us with our ice arena. There used to be called the Mighty Duck grants. They were around for a while, then they were gone for a couple of years. I think they're back now. The Mighty Duck grants are back. We certainly would do that. When we were looking at doing the ice arena, we already had been lined up for getting Mighty Duck money to do the ice sheets. I don't know if you want to add to that, Jim.
Yes, Mayor and Council. The Minnesota Ice Arena Managers Association, Miami, is currently trying to lobby another round of Mighty Ducks grants. It hasn't been approved yet, but they're hoping to get that, and we're looking at other ways to raise additional funds to do that project. And one of them would be through energy savings, because the refrigeration equipment that we are putting in will give us a lot of savings that way. So, looking into it.
But you raise a good question. When I talk about after the street work is done, and you've got some buildings that you're going to be facing, yeah, one of the first things that you're going to have to make a decision about is the investment in the ice arena, because you've got 2 sheets of ice there that would need to be replaced. Yeah. Any other questions that I could answer for City Council or for anyone?
Maybe from the days. Well, at this point then, we'll open a public hearing regarding questions, comments, or inquiries about the 2019 property tax levy and 2018 revised 2019 proposed budget. So anyone that would care to step up to the dais and ask questions, speak, or deliver their opinions in regards to what we're here to discuss this evening. When you come up there, would you please state your name and your address and sign in for me, please?
Yeah, my name's Carl Flick. I own 1301, 1309 through 1325 commercial property on 66th Street. And we've gone through, obviously, a terrible 3 years with the construction going on. It does look nice now, but it has caused me a loss of a tenant. Now my taxes have gone up 9%. That's a huge number. I mean, I can see things going up, cost of living, maybe even double maybe, but not 9-10%. So is there, I'm sorry, I came to the meeting late here, so I hope I haven't missed something, but is there something that can be done about this, and what kind of future are we looking at? I mean, I'm going to lose tenants over this thing.
Okay, I think that City Manager Devich has addressed at least some of the long-range looking forward type evaluations. I don't know, Steve, is there someone that could address and I think that maybe it's important that I'm relatively certain you're not the only individual entrepreneur on 66th Street that's suffered some economic loss during the last 18 months while the road was being developed. I don't know that we individually have anything to do to address that. I think that there's been discussions among council about trying to figure out some sort of recompense, but I don't know that we've ever found the particular pool of money to use to distribute that. So perhaps, City Manager, if you could explain to the
Thank you.
gentleman where
Right.
we stand.
Well, I mean, you're looking at about a three-part answer, because I kind of see a three-part question, Mr. Flick. With respect to the increase in your tax of 10%, you know, I don't know, but you can talk to somebody here at City Hall to look at your property tax bill. We're only looking and talking about the actual tax levy increase. It seems to me that if you're looking at 10%, there's a property value or something increase that might have happened with your taxes at the same time, I would guess. And so without looking at it, we could take a look at it and break it down as to where it came from. But individually, there's nothing we can do to change an individual property tax statement. What we're looking at here is the overall tax levy that's generated by the city, across the city for all properties, commercial, multifamily, single-family homes. With respect to 66th Street, again, there's nothing that we have there. First of all, 66th Street is a county road, and it's a county project that the city of Richfield participated in. And, you know, any impacts that you might have because of it, it's like anything else anywhere in the Twin Cities where they do roads. Businesses get impacted, but city governments don't usually respond to that. In fact, we on 66th Street have two businesses that were impacted. We have two of our liquor stores that were impacted. So, you know, and I can empathize with the fact that whenever there's construction, I know any business is impacted.
Well, one of my bigger problems is they took away 5 of my parking spaces. So that doesn't make your property worth more money when they take away a very, very valuable. Now it's hard for me to get a tenant when I have to tell a tenant he's only got 3 or 4 parking spaces and he needs 5 or 6. So I realize that that's the Hennepin County that did that. But at the same time, they raised the value of the property by a large number and took part of my property away. So
Yeah.
I have a real hard time with this, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my tenants. Right now, I do have it empty, and people are coming in and they like the space, but they don't like the parking. They don't like what I have to charge to pay the taxes back, and it's almost like the taxes or the city and the counties against businesses in the area.
Well, you know, let me respond to that. You missed the first part of the hearing while I was addressing the very issue that you're talking about. Again, we're talking about only the tax levy increase, and nothing to do with property values. And as I kind of surmised a few minutes ago, the reason that you got the big tax increase is because of the change in your value. But the change in your value is not something that we can address tonight. The change in your value is something that's set by the Hennepin County assessor, and you have an opportunity in the spring to contest the value that they put on that property. You can go to Hennepin County, to the Hennepin County assessor's office, and you can schedule a meeting with them, and you can do an assessment appeal. And that's how the process would start. If you're appealing the fact, again, as you say, that they've taken away parking spaces from your business property, and then they significantly, up the value of it, that would be the way to go. That'd be the spot to go to. That's the proper way and the legal way to address that.
Okay, every segment of the tax, there's what, 7 or 8 different segments here.
Taxing jurisdiction, sure.
Every one of them went up
Right.
8, 9, and 10%.
Yes.
It's,
Because every taxing jurisdiction in Minnesota is based off of what's called a tax capacity value. And the fact that the market value of your property went up significantly means that the underlying tax capacity value of your property went up. And every tax levy, from all the taxing jurisdictions, from the city, the county, the school, all the other miscellaneous districts, it's all going to have the same impact. It's all going to ratchet up considerably more than the tax levy itself because of the underlying market value increase.
well, I'll let you be here because I got other people that have some questions. But, I'm more than happy to pay my taxes in terms of the schools but I've been here for over 40 years and I've watched government, and of course that's what we're paying for. Anyway, I'll let you be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to come up and speak?
Renee Anderson, 701 East 66th Street. Just out of curiosity, I get what you're saying with the property values, but in 2018, my property taxes went up 22%. Now in 2019, they're proposed to go up another 23%. Am I going to have to look at this as 25% in 2020?
Again, I'm not looking at your specific statement, but I will tell you there had to be a significant increase in what the county valued your property from one year to the next. It had to be.
I did a kitchen remodel,
Okay.
but there was a kitchen there already. I didn't
Okay.
create a new
Okay.
part of my property.
Yep, I understand. But what I'm trying to say is I wish the state would do a better job of clarifying for people.
I know, I understand. I understand that this
what a
is not
TNT
about the property value.
It's not about the
itself.
value. Yeah, it's only about the tax levy.
So-
But you should, again, if you feel that you've been assessed too much, you have recourse. You can go to the county assessor in the spring, and you can set it up. You can call them tomorrow if you want to, and tell them that you want to, take a look at your property value and your assessment for taxes payable for 2019, and that you want to contest them. And sit down and talk with Hennepin County about that, and they'll go through it with you individually. And if you want to contest it beyond that, there's a recourse that we can show you here at the city how to do that if you want to.
I'd love to
But
do that.
it's all about the value, because as we put up there, if a property went up, the value of a property, residential property, went up 10.5% from payable 18 to payable 2019, and the value of the property was $275. The city tax increase, and again, that's all we're talking about tonight is the city tax, not the school or the county. But the city tax, the most that would go up is $20 a year.
So the city tax here.
It's going to be more because.
Is it based off the value of my house? Or
Always,
is it
yes.
based evenly across every citizen?
No. It's a complicated tax system we live in, but what I'm saying is for everyone's home, the value, it computes down to what's called the tax capacity of your individual house and this gentleman's individual business. And if the tax levy increase is 5%, it's levied 5% against every property at its tax capacity value. And so when your market value goes up, your tax capacity base goes up. And so your 5%, the 5% levy increase against your house is going to show up much greater than a house that, basically went up just, maybe 5% or something. And so that's the impact. I think that last year, to be fair, there were there were a lot of bigger tax increases because the city passed some school referenda at the same time, and
And
you
again,
know,
I don't have any children.
yeah, but I mean, we all have to pay for that, right? We all do, though. It's a community thing. I mean, schools are part of a community, what makes the value of a community and what makes people want to live in a community. So, you know, it's all part of the same thing. But again, for this year, for your specific issue, it boils down to the increase in your property value. It does.
And then just to be clear, the 66th Street project, wasn't that federally funded?
No, it was mostly county funded and city funded. I don't know, Kristen, there was some federal money in there? How much? 7 million, but I mean, the county was way more than that. Yeah, $60 million project, 7 million was federal.
And then the rest was us?
City and county, well, mostly county, but quite a bit of us too. About half and half. Yeah, it's huge. It's a huge cost burden for a small city like Richfield.
I know, and you tore up sidewalks and
Oh, everything was redone,
streets
yeah.
that were just done in 2009.
Yeah, well,
So
I
it
mean,
kind of seemed like a little bit of a waste of money.
well, the street had, 66th Street had a lot of problems, had to get redone. And again, it was a county project that we participated in because it was our sewer lines and our water lines and all of our utility lines under the street. And when you tear a street up like that, it would be.
Oh, I get that.
Yeah,
I
you
get
got to
that.
go down, you got to do all
You might
that.
as well do it all in one fell
You got to do
swoop,
it all in
but
one fell swoop. But it's
There was a
crucially
lot of
expensive.
sidewalks that were torn up that were just done in 2009 that
Yeah,
they were done almost exactly the same way. Just saying.
yeah. No, I understand your
Thank you.
angst with it, I do.
Any other citizens care to speak? Seeing no others, I would move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Comments from the council? I understand that I don't understand my own tax bill. But like many of the citizens and everything, and we work up here, we do it, we all live in Richfield, we all pay the same. And by the way, I pay residential and commercial taxes also. So I recognize when you look at it, you open it up, I get home from work and the tax bills are there from Hennepin County, which include my house here in Richfield, my business in Richfield, and also I own a home in Minneapolis. And the one thing that brings clarity to me is I can look at the valuation on the home that's owned in Minneapolis as opposed to the one here and see a home that is less valued than my Richfield home that I'm taxed more for. So I'm very basic. I don't do my own taxes. I don't keep the budget at home. I don't keep it at the office. All I really look at is the bottom line, and it continually goes up. But I also know that when I look around the streets in Richfield, I look around the homes, the neighborhoods, and everything else, I don't see the deterioration you see in areas in other municipalities. I don't see things that don't get fixed by homeowners to keep up their appearance and keep up with their neighbors. I see a continuing pride in both the residential and commercial sections in Minneapolis. What I'm seeing now is a lot of commercial areas that during the recession and everything, and people weren't spending as much money, never looked run down, but never really had the fresh coat of paint or the plants out front and everything. And I'm seeing all of that now. And so while I get sticker shock looking at my tax bills for residential and commercial property in Richfield, I can look around and very easily equate that with what this community has done in keeping up and outperforming all the other municipalities. I can look at the tax bill for Minneapolis and have it explained to me, well, you get 6 major appliance picks up out of the alley and some other things, but you're also paying for a lot of things that have no direct benefit to the house we own there, the neighborhood, Roosevelt, which is right down the block, which I don't see any of those things deteriorating or falling down in Richfield. So it's a difficult, every time you get the tax bill, it's difficult because you're kind of compartmentalized a little bit in your own neighborhood and your own commercial districts. But if you take a look around, and you saw City Manager Devitt show what our revenues are, what our costs are, what our long-term capital improvements are. And the only thing I can suggest is that having been blessed with an opportunity to serve the city over the last 12 years and look at tax bills and levies every year, I think it's remarkable, save for, I think, 2009, my first year on the city council, when we had, what, a 10% something levy that really was a sticker shock. It's amazing to me how self-sufficient Richfield is and how the staff and the people that do all the work for us have managed to keep up all aspects of the city at the same time, managing as best possible to keep a levy that's something that is a little bit high, but maintains a quality of life that is unmatched in the metropolitan area from my perspective. So I'm not offering apologies. We levy what we have to, but I will offer congratulations to the people that actually run the city and how well they use that money and how careful they are with it in terms of making sure the life is best possible for everybody that lives here.
I'd just like to say a couple things. I appreciate the opportunities we have throughout the year for city manager and our finance director to share with the council and the community what the outlook looks like for our city financially and our taxes. And a couple key takeaways that I always get remembered of, and I appreciate how you explain this so simply because this is extremely complicated, is when you look at the breakdown of our budget, and the finance director showed us, our operating expenses as a city over the past several years have not increased. So our staff has really been doing a lot more work with the same or even less budget than they had in years past. And so it's not that we are growing our city services and our staff. We are continuing to provide quality city services with the same amount of staffing and budget, or if not less, in past years. And additionally, another thing that Director Regis showed was the way the city of Richfield and our city manager has been able to support us in becoming less and less dependent on very volatile funding sources, local government aid from the state of Minnesota, and the process that it's taken us to become less dependent. And so that really makes us, again, very financially strong and stable. And then, emphasizing that we continue to provide these quality services, and because of the history of our city and how it was built, there's infrastructure needs that have to be addressed and have to be rehabbed and completely overhauled and redone, because our infrastructure has a lifespan. And actually, on the lifespan of a lot of those roads, we were able to do it quite a bit further out than normally expected, because the city does take excellent care of our infrastructure. And every year you see with the mill and overlay and other projects that we are doing everything possible to prevent really dumping in big amounts of money, and we're investing in the maintenance, which in the long term and short term is less expensive. And so just a few points that I wanted to highlight, and I appreciate the city manager and our finance director sharing those things. And then the relationship this all has to the property values, which we have no control over. And then the relationship that all of this also has in terms of the few opportunities we have in this community for redevelopment and diversifying our tax base. So thank you, and I appreciate just hearing those messages over and over again and you connecting the dots.
Well, I think it's all been said, but I just, you learn something every time we do this, and you're reminded, and I think if people actually knew the intricacies of the budget, they would understand. They wouldn't like it, neither do we, but they would understand. But it's a staff that has a lot to do with us living the way we do. And that is because, Mr. Devich, you have really done a good job in making sure that you and Mr. Regis have gotten together and set, some good standards that everyone has adhered to. And still, we've got terrific city services, a terrific, quite frankly, I think, people look at us and And they just look at us with all this new respect. But, and that's because we're not only holding our own, but we're building up our own. And that requires the team that we have, who have really excelled in their job performance. So thank you all.
Thank you. Any further business? If not, then I would schedule a final action on the levy and budget items, utility rates for the regular city council meeting of December 11th, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There being no further action, this meeting is adjourned.